It's Colleen Schmidt from Divination Counseling Service. Today I'm going to do a medical astrology. We're going to be looking at diabetes. Diabetes is a rather common, unfortunately, illness that occurs with many, I would say adults more than children, but I think that diabetes is one of our higher ranking diseases. And it's no surprise that we have a list of asteroids that relate directly to sugar, and then a whole bunch of them that kind of subset the sugar. Okay. Just very quickly, sugar is an inflammatory situation. So when people have issues with diabetes, they will often have a situation that becomes inflamed. And it's interesting because we don't really we talk about people who have diabetes and ways to manage and control diabetes, but we don't always talk about the fact that sugar is one of our biggest inflammation factors. For people that have stomach issues, sugar is bad. For people that have almost any kind of inflammatory issue, arthritis, sugar is bad. Sugar is probably the biggest inflammation factor that we all deal with. I know I have my own issues with sugar. Fortunately, I've been a borderline diabetic for most of my life, but I've never crossed over. I'm also somebody who really watches. But I can tell you that I can directly relate to an overuse of sugar when my stomach goes, because I actually do have stomach issues. So sugar is probably, besides alcohol, one of the biggest poisons that we put in our system. So it's something that we really do want to be aware of. The more educated we can be about it, the better for our health. Sugar is manufactured from sugared cane, but it is not the only form of sugar. Fruit juices, all very high in glucose, very high in sugar. All breads ultimately become sugar in our system. So sugar's a funny thing. We don't even really know when we're eating sugar unless we understand how sugar breaks down and how things like pasta and bread can become sugar in our systems. Interestingly enough, there are natural sugars that are better, but again, sugar's sugar. And so even though I would say to people, barley, good example, incredibly, very organic, natural, obviously then a natural form of sugar, but yet I can eat something with barley in and I can tell you immediately that barley's in there because it's so sweet. So realize that it might be just that taste of sweet that can lead to inflammation. Okay, I thought once upon a time that eating maple syrup would be better. It's not. Honey, it's not. Some of them break up better and faster, but they all represent sugar in our systems. So today we're going to look at 20 some asteroids that are sugar related. I am going to talk about them in a chart, how they relate to each other, where they fall in the chart, and how they're aspecting this chart. Now, one of the things that we do when we look at dis-ease in a chart is I could go to any one of these 20 something asteroids and I can probably find a way that it's really connecting into the charts. As a matter of fact, we're going to do that a little bit. But believe it or not, all 20 do not have to be a factor. You can have a factor with 5 and then find yourself in not such great shape. We looked at sugar in relation to a kidney case. I think I did look at some sugar aspects there, but again, only a fraction of what we've got. So today, what I wanted to do was look at the chart as we've been doing, but also maybe dissect that issue a little bit more with regards to the number of asteroids that we will use to find sugar issues in a chart. So before I even get there, because I'm going to pull my paper up first that has everything on it, and then I'm going to pull up the chart and I'm going to show how they interact. And I hope to do this in a timely manner. So before I get in there and I start doing all of this, I do want to mention again that I will not always be pronouncing these asteroids really well. This time today, however, you can see what they're spelled like, because I'm going to put down where they fall in the chart in terms of what sign, and then we're going to look at what that equals or how many planets that involves. And I do want to point out, because I did explain that the asteroids come from all over the world. The last one I put up there is definitely from Japan. They're also names of people, okay? So the way that they name these asteroids is they name them for people's names sometimes. And when we research them, it's generally based in the naming of them. Possibly the number, but generally it's the naming. And then it's how they show up over and over again when you're researching them. So again, I probably will not be pronouncing them all correctly. I do apologize ahead of time. But I think that when you're looking at something that involves and incorporates multiple languages, most people would have some question as to how to pronounce them, not just people who have my Mercury hates issues. So before I begin, I'm going to jump into that chart next. I just want to say thank you for watching the video. As always, I want to thank my subscribers. We're a small educational channel, and I really appreciate all the support that I've been getting from you guys. Thank you so much. So please continue to like, share, comment. Also the donations. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So small of a channel, but we're still getting some really good people to follow us. So I'm so grateful for that. Thank you so much. If you're not a subscriber, I hope you'll consider becoming one. So now that we've got that out of the way, I'm going to now jump to my first page, which is going to be the list of the asteroids. And I know it's not going to mean a lot to people, but here again, take the opportunity to maybe take screenshots, write some notes for yourself. If you are interested, you might want to look on Astrodienst, where a lot of the ephemerises are for these. Mark Pottinger is where I get my list from. I actually bought discs from him, and then I'm able to keep upgrading through him and the work he's done. So there are others, but those are the two that I'll mention off the top. I do encourage people to look at these. The details that I got off of this were very, very helpful to the client. Once again, this is a client chart, and it is a real chart, a real person. So with that said, let's jump in and look first of all at my list, which is kind of interesting. Okay, so here's my list. I had to move over some of the first several because I wanted to make room for me to be in the corner. But what I've done is I've listed out, and you can see it's quite a list, of all of the asteroids we're going to be looking at today. Okay, so they all relate to sugar on some level. Now, some of them, like Willis, does relate to some kidney things. It also relates to some head things. So the asteroids do cross over a lot. I mean, they're like any other planet in some respects. So there are some that will cross over. Others I'm going to explain to you. There's one in here. I actually have notes on it. Stellar it is. And so it's actually right here. This actually relates and has to do a lot with the appetite, which is really important when you're looking at sugar. Because, sugar, we can crave it. It really is a drug. I mean, it's just, I can't look at all this. Okay. This is just incredible how much this points out. Look at that. this major list. Okay. So not all of these, we're not going to talk about all of them. We are going to talk about a lot of them though today, because it's amazing how many fell into the chart. Now, as always, when something falls in the chart, it should fall into the sun axis as a very important axis. It can fall in the ascendant midheaven axis. In this particular chart case, the sun and the moon do form a midpoint at the Aries point. So the Aries point then becomes pretty interesting for us, and we're going to look at that. And then what I did was, once I pointed it out in the sun axis, I then began to look at the interactions between some of these asteroids. Okay, let me give you a little example here. There is a lot of stuff running. Let's just see if I can find everything. Okay, so you see this 8 Scorpio, all right? And then you see 759 Scorpio for Waterman. I'm just kind of getting into, and then there's another one up here that is, here it is, Avery, which is, you know, it's a little bit further. It's like a degree more, but they're all, if you notice, in Scorpio. It's a pretty hot spot. And so basically what it's saying is that they already have 2 triggers for sugar at this point, 8 Scorpio. And we're going to look at that in the chart, but I am going to point out that Edo is really an eating disorder. And when you have 2 sugar asteroids pointing to an eating disorder, you've got to look at the diet, and possibly there is an overabundance of eating of foods that maybe turn into sugars, or maybe a sugar addict. You know, I never really, well, there's some things I got into with this client, which I won't get into here, but I don't know that I actually said anything about that. So when we look at a chart and we go in and we start doing all of, and we're going to do that in like 2 seconds, but I really wanted to show this. I also want to show things that are close to the Aries point, because that too is going to become a factor. And for example, and I know we had it, almost 28 degrees of Pisces, which stellar is actually another appetite. Like Edo is an eating disorder. Stellar is also an appetite. So we can see that the eating issues and sugar could combine. And I do want to show that, because having had myself, in my own opinion, sugar issues throughout my life, and coming from a family where there are sugar issues, whether it's my mother who's hypoglycemic, or my grandmother who was diabetic, or my great grandmother who may have actually died from diabetes, you can see where sugar is a big issue for us. That's actually both sides of the family, by the way, when I just described that. I can tell you that once I cut out sugar, my eating became more normal. I don't say that I cut it out. I say that I control it better. And I can tell you that does affect your appetite. So there is something there. So I did want to look at that. There was another one here. I think it was in, here it is, Virgo. I was right. Reeves. That's a sugar one. That's an Aries point. So not only does this particular chart feature the sun axis sugar asteroids, but there are sugar asteroids, separate sugar asteroids, that are also affecting the moon axis. I'm going to show you that. And also the Aries point axis. So that one of the things I look for as an astrologer, and this is really helpful with accuracy if you're going to start to make predictions, you do want to see something in the chart more than once. It just means that there's a theme. And when there's a theme, then you really hit on something. Then you know that what the information you're getting is very honest. 219 is not far out. So there's a couple of those too. And I'm going to go through all of this. Chang is in there at 110. So I kind of want to show you how we wiggle a little bit to pull things in. I don't go out too far. I really don't. And I wouldn't go out at all if I didn't have other direct smack-on hits. But it is kind of interesting to get more detail and to gather more details as a result of asteroids that might be out by 10 minutes, which, by the way, Chang is. It's only out by 10 minutes. So it might be worth looking at, okay? There are astrologers that will literally go 2 degrees 30 minutes. I don't really think anything that I'm doing is going out that far, but I don't have to because everything is coming in such close proximity. The orbs are very, very tight, which does make the chart more proficient, more accurate, more detailed. So I just wanted to show this, okay? We can go through every single one of these. They're what they are is many times names of physicians that these asteroids were named after that had a hand in working with the science of diabetes or the inflammatory effects of diabetes and even the dietary effects. But I do want to point this out right here, Nakamo, okay, obviously Japanese, and check this out, Nakamura. Well, that's definitely Japanese. So you have to understand that when you look at these, how about this one? Am I? I don't know how to say this word. Obviously not English. So one of the beautiful things about working in astrology is that it is universal. It is international, not just in the studies, because the work we're doing, the lecture I had done right before this was on the Mesopotamian dignity system. So coming out of Mesopotamia, the book is a Hellenistic astrology book. So we're talking about gathering this information from some of the best resources all over the world. And that's the way you should do things. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time on this. I'm hoping that anyone who's really interested, though, can grab them off of this list and maybe even take screenshots of the video and make notes for themselves. Or stop the video, write down what it is that you're interested in. Now, these particular points that are laid out are for this specific chart. Each chart, these asteroids obviously would be in different positions. One of the things you would want to do is if you were diagnosed as a diabetic, you would want to look in the natal chart, but you also might want to look on the chart of the day and time of the discovery, of the diagnosis. Okay. There's a lot of stuff we do with astrology. Believe me, you can spend hours on one project, days, really, weeks. So we're going to jump into the chart now. Okay. And here we go. So we start off with, this is our chart, but we're not going to stay there because immediately I wanted to, all of my notes are with the dial. So once again, we're going to point out that this is the Aries point, all right? But more than that, I want to start with the sun axis, all right? I also want to point out that right here, already, there's an asteroid hit, okay? So our numbers for this sun, everything written down, 1227, which is actually where the sun is. So let's go back by the minute. Oops, wrong way. Wrong way. There we go. Okay. All right. Now, 1227 also, notice what it hits other stuff down here. So, by the way, that's a little, that's like a chaos. So we're going to see that a couple times. But we're also looking at Lilith for decisions, partners. By the way, the partner also has diabetes and endings. And there's also a victory off of this. So it's obviously very manageable and can be managed. Okay, so this point equals 1227 cardinal. It also equals 457 cardinal, which is right up in here. And it also equals 1957 fixed, which is right here. Okay. So when you go back in, you would look for the asteroids running in that vicinity. It just so happens we have a few. Okay. We have a few that hit almost directly. Now remember that she has a 1227 mutable sun, happens to be Virgo, and there are 2 asteroids on her sun by virtue of a square. So right in here, right in here. Okay, literally right in here to almost 1 degree away because they're 1338. So that one's over, in my opinion, by 9 minutes. So it's within the 10-minute range. And the other one is 1321, so that's in. And they are Charcot, and Ehrlich. Okay, now also in this very same axis, but from up here. Okay, and this one actually made it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It actually made it so we've got nodes up here. Okay, which I think is really interesting. Health-wise, nodes are nodes, so it just kind of makes me wonder how the nodes are involved with the diabetes, but it's very possible, you know. And so right here, actually a little over it, would be Scherer, which is another sugar asteroid at 520. So we we are really looking at someone who has an extreme potential to be a diabetic. Okay? And we learn through looking at the diet. Well, let's go on. We're going to learn about the diabetes as really something that, and we'll get there. Okay. So then I go to the Aries point because remember, the Aries point is just really strong in this chart. And so the Aries point would be right there, 15 degrees fixed, 0 degrees, 2230 over here, where not far away is Adamite. Okay. So it's almost like you've got to put a clamper on it. You got to look at it. You got to watch what you're doing. And because that's a restriction. And you would also then be looking at 730 over here. And one of the things I really liked when I saw over here was Calypso. And what Calypso means is that we don't really know everything. And you know, when it comes to sugar, we really don't. And I mean that not just like from the medical perspective, but from the perspective of each individual, because the way sugar affects us is completely unique to the individual. So the fact that it hits the sun moon midpoint in that manner does mean that there could be some restrictions, particularly in public, which again, eating in restaurants or eating takeout food means that you have to be much more diligent about what it is you're eating because it's too easy to not eat good things. So here toward the Aries point, I used Reeves and Chang, okay? And ironically, they're both up here. Literally, like, I believe that Reeves, for example, is like right on the Mars. All right, so there's a definite square to Mars. And it really is, you know, kind of curtailing of actions, or that this particular person does have to put energy into this problem. Okay. Gmelin, can't really, I don't really know how to say that, is at 2317, which actually makes it still in as well, because we can go all the way to 2330. So now we got 3 asteroids directly nailing that sun, right on the axis. We've got 3 asteroids completely nailing that Aries point, also sun moon midpoint. But, and here we go, the moon is right here. Okay. It's about 17 degrees. It's in Libra, but we're going to just go with cardinal because you know how this works. When I go back to cardinal, I'm pretty sure we have 1 hit on the moon even, which is like, you know, here we go. So the moon is on the cardinal and it's, here we go. Hold on. I know I saw something. And I think it's down here. It's the early Geminis. So we've got Davy. We've got Nakamura. We've got Devi, Nakamura, and I thought there was one more, and I'm not finding it. But these are all moon. These are moon hits. Okay? I don't think it matters because I've got enough. But just to let you know that this chart is getting literally slammed. Okay? There is a Dumas at 2649 Virgo, so up here. All right. So realize that if we've got Virgo, we're getting hit here. Okay. You would only go 2230. We're getting hit again up here. Okay. So that does pull in Dumas, Avicenna. And by the way, those two, which are right up here. Okay. Wait till I do this. Okay. Make sure I'm doing it right. Okay. Yep. I'm doing it right. Okay. Look at what's here. Hades. In other words, there's deterioration as a result of sugar. Yeah. Yeah, the two Avicenna at 25.6, which I believe is like right here. Let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here it is. It literally is right across from it. But if you look at Dumas at 2649, it's not that far away. So again, you're really playing around Hades. And Hades is deterioration. With Hades, things tend to get worse. Hades is also bacteria and bacterial. Okay. So that was a tough one. Okay. That was another one that I really felt was really worth looking at. And what's interesting is these two are kind of just a bit outside of the moon axis. But you see how the fact is that they're together and then boom. Because if I go to the moon axis, okay, which is, I'm going to say 17 degrees, if you add 2230 to that, you're at 3944. So that is actually, oh yeah, right there. So that means that Hades is also in the moon axis. Okay. I can tell you that that fits what this person did for her work when she worked. She's no longer working in that field, but it fits. It fits. It really fits. So it's just interesting and I didn't even have to, I mean, I just brought up to you 3, 5, 3. So we're talking, I already brought up half of those asteroids. Already we've discussed 8 out of, or 9, maybe even 10 asteroids out of the 20 something. So, but you see what I mean? One of the things you want to see in a chart is you want to see something over and over and over again. Now, I did not go through every single one of these, but let me show you something here because they all do this. They're all valid in some respect. Here's another one that we didn't talk about. The IMAI one is actually at 9 degrees 37. So it's like right here. Okay, it's right there. That's right there. Well, close. Okay, we can go all the way to there. Okay, so look what that equals. Chiron, Jupiter, midpoint, there it is. As my teacher points out, Jupiter, Venus, the midpoint of Jupiter, Venus, which I actually wrote down somewhere, is another really important aspect of the chart. But the fact that this sugar stuff equals Chiron, Jupiter, it is kind of saying that as the sugar takes over, it will be a change of life. And believe me, among many things, it really did. It is a factor in some things that have changed her life. So yeah, you see that sugar is Jupiter. Okay. Venus, Jupiter is sugar. Okay. And in her chart, 1519 of cardinal. Okay, now remember that I said the moon was 17 degrees. I think it's like 1717 or something, right? Or 1712 or 17, no, there it is, 1714, it shows up. Let me go look. I'll tell you exactly. We just have to look it up. Okay, so it is here. Oh, 1729. So about 17 and a half. Okay. Now, if I have a midpoint of 1519, that's a little far, I think, right? But is it? And it's really an interesting question because I think that might be debatable to some astrologers that might be actually still in play even at that distance. Okay, look that it equals Chronos. It's very close to Mercury, but look at that's our Venus Jupiter. Okay, so these are things that are really important. So if you are somebody who has a blood sugar issue, you might want to consider learning more about how to research that in your chart. Because the fact is that I could go on and on. I could keep doing this with these guys. We have that equaling Jupiter. I'm just seeing if there's another one that's going to be real standout here. I did all the 8 degree of Scorpio already. So when you're looking, and this is what I was also talking about. At 9:59, we go back to that. We already looked at that 9 degree for 9 degree of Capricorn, right? That was what equaled Jupiter at 9:37. But how about this one at 9:59 at almost 10? All right, which I think is even more exact. Look at that. You still got Jupiter Chiron. It's another one. So now I have just gone through maybe a dozen, maybe more than a dozen asteroids very quickly. But out of those 20, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a scoop of them. You're not looking for just one or two. If it's only one, it might not really materialize into anything. If you see three, now you might want to start looking how they're interacting. I'm just saying that this is the rabbit hole that we create for ourselves when we begin to look at medical astrology. Because, like regular astrology, you can get into a chart so much that it's a big rabbit hole and you just keep going, oh my, I should look at this. Oh my, I should look at that. And we could keep going on because, ironically, up here at this 9 degree area, we also have a panacea. A panacea tells us that there could actually be some, not only manageability, but ways to correct some of this. And that is very true. That diabetes does not have to become something that's unmanageable or that will ultimately take you to the grave. Those days, thankfully, are long past. We're all smarter than that now, and we can head these things off at the pass. So let me come on back. So I'm back, and as always, I just came back to say goodbye. But once again, if you have any questions or if you need private work, you can contact me at divinationcounselingservice.org. I'd be happy to answer any questions or help anyone out with anything they might be looking up. Just to kind of make sure that I've gone over everything. One of the things I did not point out, but I wanted to, and I could go back in the chart and do it, but I really looked at a lot of the asteroids, many more than I actually showed on the chart. But just to kind of put it out there, Willis, which you saw in my list, in this chart, just like Dobson, both of these, which come together, also one conjuncts Neptune and the other one just conjuncts it on the dial, but they both come with Neptune, which also means that whenever you see Neptune involved in any kind of medical diagnosis, it means that they might not understand everything, or there might be some weird symptoms, or there might be other illnesses that are connected, and so it's really hard to come up with a really good diagnostics. But one of the things that I did want to talk about in this chart was that Willis, which equals Neptune, also equaled an asteroid called Aragon, which means that in this person's lack of knowledge, or in their lack of clarity, probably a better, they are doing self-destructive things. There are self-destructive habits that they may not realize that's compounding their problem. Okay. The other one I wanted to talk about, which I didn't, was Minkowski, Minkowski, at 4 degrees 40 Gemini, which I already told you about how many asteroids there were at that that was that axis point for the moon. It's literally within that. But what I really wanted to talk about was how that point conjuncts Pluto on the dial, but actually it squares Pluto, so that once again we see how sugar can transform this individual. But what I really liked about it was it also equaled the asteroid Eos, which is chaos and scattered energy. So when I looked at this chart, and I've done studies, a lot of studies on this chart, okay? I use this chart actually for the Mungus study. But for this diabetic study, what I really got into, even though I've already worked with this chart a lot, what I really got into was all the ways in which the diabetes was a transformation of this person's life, how much it was affected by their eating habits. 2 asteroids told us that, and a stellar, and the other one was, it's on the back sheet here. I know I said it, but I'm going to go through it again. It was, I have it, Nakamura? No, Ito. That's right. It was Ito and stellar. Okay, so Nakamura's there, but it's not that. But the other part of it is that in this chart, it was amazing how much scattered energy it caused, how much chaos it caused. I just thought that was really interesting. So I do believe that finishes up my notes, just making sure I've got it all. This is quite a lot of notes here again. And yeah, 8 to 9 fixed, though it wasn't a really important part for particularly the sun axis, was a pickup for the moon axis. And it was a lot about inflammation increasing the risk of diabetes. And that's what Avery stands for. So when you get to that 8 to 9 fix, which I did talk about in the chart, I don't know if I mentioned it, but it increases, some of the asteroids are about the inflammation factor. And in this particular case, Avery is one of those. So with that said, thank you so much for watching this video. And once again, as always, until we meet again, I wish you only happiness.